guys, this is Mike from Library of Dyslexia. Today we're going to be going over a very simple thing. I can speak English too. It's called The Will to Believe by William James. Anyways, this is kind of a conclusion to a little segue into philosophy of religion, where first we talked about Pascal's wager, then we moved on to W.K. Clifford's The Ethics of Beliefs, finally moving on to William James. This is where it's at. This is good stuff. The Will to Believe. Let us give the name of hypothesis to anything that may be proposed to our belief, and just as the electricians speak of live and dead wires, let us speak of any hypothesis as either alive or dead. A live hypothesis is one which appeals as real possibility to him to whom it is proposed. If I ask you to believe in Mahdi, the notion makes no electric connection with your nature. It refuses to scintillate with any credibility at all. As an hypothesis, it is completely dead to an Arab, however, even if he be not one of Mahdi's followers. The hypothesis is among the mind's possibilities. It is alive. This shows that deadness and liveness in a hypothesis are not intrinsic properties, but relations to the individual thinker. They are measured by his willingness to act. The maximum of liveness in a hypothesis means a willingness to act irrevocably. Practically, that means belief. But there is some believing tendency wherever there is willingness to act at all. Next, let us call the decision between two hypotheses an option. Options may be of several kinds. They may be first, living or dead, secondly, forced or avoidable, thirdly, momentous or trivial, and for our purposes we may call an option a genuine option when it is of the forced, living, and momentous kind. A living option is one in which both hypotheses are live ones. If I say to you, be a theosophist or be a Mohammedan, it is probably a dead option, because for you neither hypothesis is likely to be alive. But if I say be an agnostic or be a Christian, it is otherwise. Trained as you are, each hypothesis makes some appeal, however small, to your belief. Next, if I say to you, choose between going out with your umbrella or without it, I do not offer you a genuine option, for it is not forced. You can easily avoid it by not going out at all. Similarly, if I say either love me or hate me, either call my theory true or call it false, your option is avoidable. You may remain indifferent to me, neither loving nor hating, and you may decline to offer any judgment as to my theory. But if I say either accept this truth or go without it, I put you on a forced option, for there is no standing place outside the alternative. Every dilemma based on a complete logistical disjunction with no possibility of not choosing is an option of this forced kind. Finally, if I were Dr. Nansen and proposed to you to join my North Pole expedition, your option would be momentous, for this would probably be your similar opportunity, and your choice now would either exclude you from the North Pole sort of immortality altogether, or put at least the chance of it into your hands. He who refuses to embrace a unique opportunity loses the prize as surely as if he had tried and failed. Per contra, the option is trivial when the opportunity is not unique, when the stake is insignificant, or when the decision is reversible if it later proves unwise. Such trivial options abound in the scientific life. A chemist finds a hypothesis live enough to spend a year in its verification. He believes in it to that extent, but if his experiments prove inconclusive either way, he is quit for his loss of time, no vital harm being done. It will facilitate our discussion if we keep all these distinctions well in mind. The next matter to consider is the actual psychology of human opinion. When we look at certain facts, it seems as if our passional and volitional nature lay at the root of all of our convictions. When we look at others, it seems as if they could do nothing when the intellect had once said its say. Let us take the latter facts up first. Does it not seem preposterous, on the very face of it, to talk of our opinions being modifiable at will? Can our will either help or hinder our intellect in its perceptions of truth? Can we, just by willing it, believe that Abraham Lincoln's existence is a myth, and that the portraits of him in McClure's magazine are all of someone else? Can we, by any effort of our will, or by any strength of wish that it were true, believe ourselves well and about when we are roaring with rheumatism in bed, or feel certain that the sum of two $1 bills in our pocket must be $100? We can say any of these things, but we are absolutely impotent to believe them. And of just such things is the whole fabric of the truths that we do believe in made up, matters of fact, immediate or remote, as Hume said, and relations between ideas, which are either there or not there, for us if we see them so, and which, if not there, cannot be put there by any action of our own. In Pascal's Thoughts, there is a celebrated passage known in literature as Pascal's Wager. In it, he tries to force us into Christianity by reasoning as if our concern with truth resembled our concern with the stakes in a game of chance. Translated freely, his words are these: you must either believe or not believe that God is. Which will you do? Your human reason cannot say. The game is going on between you and the nature of things, which at the day of judgment will bring out either heads or tails. Weigh what your gains and your losses would be if you should stake all you have on heads, or God's existence. If you win in such case, you gain eternal beatitude. If you lose nothing at all. If there were an infinity of chances and only one for God in this wager, still you ought to stake your all on God. For though you surely risk a finite loss by this procedure, any finite loss is reasonable, even a certain one is reasonable. If there is but the possibility of infinite gain, go then and take your holy water and have masses said, belief will come and stupefy your scruples. Why should you not? At bottom, what have you to lose? You probably feel that when religious faith expresses itself thus, in the language of the gaming table, it is put to its last trumps. Surely Pascal's own personal belief in masses and holy water had far other springs, and the celebrated page of his is but an argument for others, a last desperate snatch at a weapon against the hardness of the unbelieving heart. We feel that a faith in masses and holy water adopted willfully after such a mechanical calculation would lack the inner soul of faith's reality. And if we were ourselves in the place of the deity, we should probably take particular pleasure in cutting off believers of this pattern from their infinite reward. It is evident that unless there be some pre-existing tendency to believe in masses and holy water, the option offered to the will by Pascal is not a living option. Certainly no Turk ever took to the masses and holy water on its account, and even to us Protestants, these means of salvation seem such foregone impossibilities that Pascal's logic invoked for them specifically leaves us unmoved. As well might the Mahdi write to us saying, I am the expected one whom God has created in his effulgence. You shall be infinitely happy if you confess me, otherwise you shall be cut off from the light of the sun. Weigh then your infinite gain, if I am genuine, against your finite sacrifice, if I am not. His logic would be that of Pascal, but he would vainly use it on us, for the hypothesis he offers us is dead. No tendency to act on it exists in us to any degree. The task of believing by our volition seems then, from one point of view, simply silly. From another point of view, it is worse than silly. It is vile. When one turns to the magnificent edifice of the physical sciences and sees how it was reared, what thousands of disinterested moral lives of men lie buried in its mere foundations, what patience and postponement, what choking down of preference, what submission to the icy laws of outer fact are wrought into its very stones and mortar, how absolutely impersonal it stands in its vast augustness, then how besotted and contemptible seems every little sentimentalist who comes blowing his voluntary smoke wreaths and pretending to decide things from out of his private dream. Can we wonder if those bred in the rugged and manly school of science should feel like spewing such subjectivism out of their mouths? The whole system of loyalties which grow up in the schools of science go dead against its toleration, so that it is only natural that those who have caught the scientific fever should pass over to the opposite extreme and write sometimes as if the incorruptibly truthful intellect ought positively to prefer bitterness and unacceptableness to the heart in its cup. It fortifies my soul to know that though I perish, truth is so, sings Clow, while Huxley exclaims, my only consolation lies in the reflection that, however bad our posterity may become, so far as they hold by the plain rule of not pretending to believe what they have no reason to believe, because it may be to their advantage so to pretend, the word pretend is surely here redundant, they will not have reached the lowest depths of immorality, and that delicious enfant terrible, I don't know how to speak French. Clifford writes, belief is desecrated when given to the unproved and unquestioned statements for the solace and private pleasure of the believer. Whoso deserve well of his fellows in this matter will guard the purity of his belief with the very fanaticism of jealous care, lest at any time it should rest on an unworthy object and catch a stain which can never be wiped away. If a belief has been accepted on insufficient evidence, even though the belief be true, as Clifford on the same page explains, the pleasure is a stolen one. It is sinful because it is stolen in defiance of our duty to mankind. That duty is to guard ourselves from such beliefs as from a pestilence, which may shortly master our own body and then spread to the rest of the town. It is wrong always, everywhere, and for everyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. All this strikes one as healthy, even when expressed, as by Clifford, with somewhat too much robustious pathos in the voice. Free will and simple wishing do seem, in the matter of our credences, to be only fifth wheels to the coach. Yet if any one should thereupon assume the intellectual insight is what remains after wish and will and sentimental preference have taken wing, or that pure reason is what then settles our opinions, he would fly quite as directly in the teeth of the facts. It is only our already dead hypotheses that our willing nature is unable to bring to life again. But what has made them dead for us is for the most part a previous action of our willing nature of an antagonistic kind. When I say willing nature, I do not mean only such deliberate volitions as may have set up habits of belief that we cannot now escape from. I mean all such factors of belief such as fear and hope, prejudice and passion, imitation and partisanship, and the circumpressure of our caste and set. As a matter of fact, we find ourselves believing, we hardly know how or why. Mr. Balfour gives the name of authority to all those influences born of the intellectual climate that make hypotheses possible or impossible for us, alive or dead. Here in this room, we all of us believe in molecules and the conservation of energy, in democracy and necessary progress, in Protestant Christianity and the duty of fighting for the doctrine of the immortal Monroe, all for no reasons worthy of the name. We see into these matters with no more inner clearness, and probably with much less than any disbeliever in them might possess. His unconventionality would probably have some grounds to show for its conclusions, but for us, not insight, but the prestige of the opinions, is what makes a spark shoot from them and light up our sleeping magazines of faith. Our reason is quite satisfied in 999 cases out of every 1,000 of us, if it can find a few arguments that will do to recite in case our credulity is criticized by someone else. Our faith is faith in someone else's faith. And in the greatest matters, this is most the case. Good rhyme. Evidently, then, our non-intellectual nature does influence our convictions. There are passional tendencies and volitions which run before and others which come after belief, and it is only the latter that are too late for the fair, and they are not too late when the previous passional work has been already in their own direction. Pascal's argument, instead of being powerless, then seems a regular clincher, and is the last stroke needed to make our faith in masses and holy water complete. The state of things is evidently far from simple, and pure insight and logic, whatever they might do ideally, are not the only things that really do produce our creeds. Our next duty, having recognized this mixed up state of affairs, is to ask whether it be simply reprehensible and pathological, or whether, on the contrary, we must treat it as a normal element in making up our minds. The thesis I defend is briefly stated this: our passional nature not only lawfully may, but must decide an option between propositions whenever it is a genuine option that cannot by its nature be decided on intellectual grounds. For to say under such circumstances, do not decide, but leave the question open, is itself a passional decision, just like deciding yes or no, and is attended with the same risk of losing the truth. One more point, small but important, and our preliminaries are done. There are two ways of looking at our duty in the matter of opinion, ways entirely different, and yet ways about whose difference the theory of knowledge seems hitherto to have shown very little concern. We must know the truth, and we must avoid error. These are our first and great commandments as would-be knowers, but they are not two ways of stating an identical commandment. They are two separable laws. Although it may indeed happen that when we believe the truth A, we escape as an incidental consequence from believing the falsehood B, it hardly ever happens that by merely disbelieving B, we necessarily believe A. We may, in escaping B, fall into believing other falsehoods, C or D, just as bad as B, or we may escape B by not believing anything at all, not even A. Believe truth, shun error. These, we see, are two materially different laws, and by choosing between them, we may end up by coloring differently our whole intellectual life.